sir? Erick Prince. Real pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
I saw you speak at CPAC.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm proud of who my enemies are. I've made a few around.
That's good. That's good, right?
I visited Sikot yesterday.
Yes, I saw
and I
that.
was very impressed. And I will proudly go back and tell the good news story that it is possible to turn around chaos. I'm not surprised, but also disgusted that the State Department still lists El Salvador as a super dangerous war zone country.
Well, hopefully they will change that because it's unsustainable really to keep it at level 3. We should be level 1. It's not going to happen, but at least level 2 it would be more sustainable.
How are you, sir? Erick Prince. Real pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
I saw you speak at CPAC.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Thank
Prince became the biggest of the State Department's 3 private security contractors and seemingly the most reckless. A 2007 investigation by the U.S. State Department found that Blackwater was overbilling the State Department by manipulating its personnel records. It also found that Blackwater guards were partying, drinking, and once even drunkenly crashed a $180,000 armored car. According to one of the investigators, they saw themselves as above the law.
Look, we employed thousands of people, and I would never say that the men were perfect. We didn't employ angels, we employed veterans.
You do admit that Blackwater personnel have shot and killed innocent civilians, don't you?
No, sir, I disagree with that.
In 2007, Blackwater employees opened fire and killed 17 unarmed Aqui civilians, including a 9-year-old boy. The incident became known as the Nasur Square Massacre. Blackwater claimed its guards were under attack and acted in self-defense. But the first U.S. soldiers to respond to the scene found no evidence of enemy activity, and the report said the shootings by Blackwater were a criminal event. 2 Aqui police officers directing traffic in the square at the time back up the report.
متواجدين بالساحة ماكو أي شيء حتى أي طلقة ثارت من أي جهة من عليهم. إطلاقات عشوائي.
According to The Intercept, Blackwater whistleblowers alleged that Prince encouraged an environment in which Iraqis were killed for sport.
You were operating in a war zone, right? So the military in Iraq and Afghanistan, for example, had very strict rules of engagement. Did you follow them?
Sure.
In a sworn statement, one former Blackwater employee claimed Prince views himself as a Christian crusader, tasked with eliminating Muslims and the Islamic faith from the globe, and that Prince encouraged and rewarded the destruction of Iraqi life. If you don't believe...
Erick Prince fundó Blackwater en 1997. Es uno de los pocos que ha obtenido contratos por más de $1 billón solo en Estados Unidos. En el 2007 fue acusado de manipulación y alterar las facturas para cobrar más al Estado. También fue acusado que sus mercenarios siempre andaban de fiesta tomando y eran un peligro. En el 2007 también fue acusado de que sus mercenarios dispararon y mataron a civiles inocentes. Según las investigaciones, sus mercenarios dispararon indiscriminadamente y mataron a 17 civiles.
That take Prince's own words.
Which is true. I think if you referred to terrorists, you call them whatever you want. But you said these were the chanting barbarians American troops had been sent to liberate. You weren't sent to liberate terrorists. Sounds like you're talking about Iraqis.
look,
It's from your words, from your memory.
In a United States court, 3 Blackwater contractors were convicted on manslaughter charges. A 4th was found guilty of first-degree murder. The Nasur Square massacre was far from the only case where Blackwater contractors, under Prince, acted unjustly. In 2005, it was reported that Blackwater guards fired off 70 rounds into an Iraqi's car. In 2006, witnesses said an Iraqi ambulance driver was killed by uncontrolled arms firing by Blackwater guards. After these atrocities, Blackwater rebranded and changed its name to Z, and then rebranded once more to Academy. But the name change wasn't enough to stop the seemingly consistent attacks on Prince, who sold a rebranded version of Blackwater in 2010.
If leadership persists, it is justified to reintroduce foreign governance, stating it is time for us to just put the imperial hat back on, to say we are going to govern those countries if you are incapable of governing yourself, because enough is enough. When asked if he was endorsing colonialism, Prince confirmed absolutely yes.
Then it's time for us to just put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You can say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually making their country better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Erick Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes.
In essence, Erick Prince is suggesting that African leaders are excessively corrupt to the extent that the only viable solution is to regain control over African countries. He further remarked that he believed this idea was suitable not only for Africa, but also for Latin America. During the 19th and 20th centuries, European powers like Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, and others colonized African territories in a period known as the Scramble for Africa. In 1960, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 1514, also called the Declaration on Decolonization. This declaration stressed the UN's support for independence movements in trust and non-self-governing territories, advocating for the rapid and unconditional cessation of colonialism in all its forms, and reaffirming the right of all peoples to self-determination. While it is acknowledged that corruption exists in numerous African nations, proposing colonization as the sole remedy for African leadership issues is unprecedented. Colonization encompassed not only the governance by European powers, but also the plundering of resources, significant loss and devastation of lives, and enduring psychological effects on Africans. Additionally, colonization contributed to environmental degradation, the proliferation of diseases, economic instability, ethnic conflicts, and human rights abuses, problems that can persist long after the end of colonial rule. Similar to past advocates of imperialism, Prince appears oblivious to his own motives and their inevitable consequences. He justifies his idea by asserting that countries suffering under corrupt governments deserve better. However, throughout history, such beneficence has consistently resulted in widespread death and suffering.
One of our men were lost in action doing that mission.
So you mentioned there that the US government asked you to do a job and you did it. You mentioned that you lost men on your watch. What you didn't mention is that you also killed a lot of people. You say, well, percentages is great. Let's talk about individual cases. In 2005, Blackwater guards fired 70 rounds into an Iraqi civilian's car, forcing the State Department to investigate. In 2006, according to leaked Pentagon documents, Blackwater guards fired indiscriminately at Iraqi civilians, killing, among others, an ambulance driver. In 2007, Blackwater guards shot and killed 14 Iraqi civilians in what's been called the Nisor Square Massacre, or Baghdad's Bloody Sunday. That is the record that a lot of people around the world remember when they hear the name Blackwater.
Sure, and when you do 100,000 missions, it's easy to take some things out of context. But remember, you had many thousands of insurgents actively trying to kill Americans, and not just American servicemen, but the most newsworthy Americans there, diplomats, and when the State Department asked you
But
to
the people
drive
I'm
them-
mentioning weren't insurgents. You killed at Nisour Square, your men killed a mother and son on their way to an appointment, a doctor and her son. They killed a 9-year-old boy, shot him in the head.
Sadly, the insurgents don't wear uniforms. They would drive ambulances filled with explosives. They would drive...
So your men
other
thought they were
civilian-
shooting at insurgents?
A car bomb doesn't give you much time to decide.
There was no car bomb at Nisour Square in 2007.
Actually, right before the Nisour Square event, there was. There was
Not
a
at
large-
Nisour Square, there was no car bomb.
Excuse me, less than 5 minutes before that event happened, there was a large car bomb that went off where there was a protective team of ours protecting a USAID official. And sadly, that car bomb went off. The team decided to move.
En la matanza murieron 17 civiles, incluyendo un niño de 9 años con un tiro en la cabeza. El tiroteo pasó a ser conocido como la masacre de la Plaza Nisour. Lo que dijo Blackwater fue que les habían disparado y que solo respondieron, pero los testigos en las investigaciones, incluyendo los soldados de USA o de Estados Unidos, dijeron que nunca habían escuchado fuego de enemigos. Ese día, según uno de los mercenarios acusados, dijo que Erick Prince les decía que los iraquíes tenían que ser asesinados por deporte.
Through there,
Y ot-
and a support team went to block the traffic circle so that the fleeing team could move through smoothly and not be ambushed. When the intelligence provided by the State Department and the U.S. government says, be on the lookout for a white Kia, okay, and all the other cars in the traffic circle stop, except for a white Kia, sadly, sometimes the guys have a split second to make that decision.
Of course, and Blackwater say the white Kia stopped. As you well know, because you've discussed this far more than I have, all of the eyewitnesses there say that there was no white Kia heading towards you. The US colonel who turned up on the day said that there was no enemy activity involved. He said it was a criminal event and an excessive shooting. A US court of law in December prosecuted one of your men for first-degree murder for killing Ahmed Rubai and his mother at Nisour Square. And 3 other, hold on, let me finish. 3 other men were prosecuted for manslaughter. 4 of your men, murder and manslaughter, in not Iraqi courts, US courts.
That's right. They prosecuted them 4 times and they finally got a conviction. The first time it was thrown out for prosecutorial misconduct.
Guilty. They found them guilty.
No. The first time it was thrown out for prosecutorial misconduct. The second time it was overturned. The third time it was a mistrial. The federal government finally got them in a DC jury on the 4th time they tried.
DC jury not a legitimate jury?
I would say a jury of your peers does not really compare to the rest of America. No, that's
okay. Okay, so some juries are legitimate, some not, like so-called judges. I've heard that language before. But they were prosecuted for murder and manslaughter. Do you have any regrets for the people who died? A 9-year-old boy shot in the head, wasn't an insurgent?
Of course we did. Of course. We hired, as the company, we hired the prosecutor that prosecuted Saddam to go find each of these families, to pay Salacia, to make amends as best as possible.
Did you ever reach out to them?
Did I personally?
Yeah.
I haven't found all of them, but we certainly apologize to the ones I've had contact with.
And it's not just these killings, and these killings that are documented. It goes beyond just guards, as you know. Blackwater got billions of dollars in US government contracts.
Not billions.
More than $1 billion in US government contracts during that period.
Over 12 years.
And yet a scathing US State Department investigation found that Blackwater, quote, was overbilling the State Department and manipulating personnel records. Its guards were partying, drinking, and even crashed an armored car and saw themselves as, quote, above the law. Pretty damning. The US State Department is saying this about the company they're giving contracts to. Overbilling and manipulating.
We never paid any fines for anything like that. That's a fact.
You paid fines for a lot of things.
The only thing we paid a fine for was an ITAR violation. I'll give you an example.
And sorry, did you say the only thing you paid a fine for? You paid $7.5 million fine in 2012 to settle 17 criminal charges. You paid a $42 million settlement to the State Department in 2010 for illegal arms sales.
2012, I'd already sold the business. I sold it in 2010.
But the cases go back beyond 2010. The criminal charges related to all sorts of things that went back years, including South Sudan. You broke US sanctions to try and sell weapons to South Sudan.
No, there's no weapons in South Sudan.
There was a proposal on the table. You never put a proposal on the table to Salva Kiir's government worth $100 million.
Actually, the issue there was a satellite phone.
So you did put a proposal on the table to Salva Kiir's government, which was under US sanctions?
What the State Department complained about then, that was back in 2005.
Okay.
Was
My point is,
a very dangerous satellite phone, the same thing you can buy in Heathrow duty free.
Okay, we can argue about the fines. Let's just deal with this report. The US State Department said you were manipulating personal records, overbilling the State Department, and your guards were partying, drinking, and even crashed an armored car. That was a State Department investigation in 2007.
Look, we employed thousands of people And I would never say that the men were perfect. We didn't employ angels. We employed veterans who volunteered to serve their country again in a very dangerous place. And like I said, 41 of them paid the ultimate cost, and hundreds more were seriously wounded.
It's a problem when you say we didn't employ angels, we employed veterans, but right now you want to do it all again. That's the problem, is it not?
Well, here's the thing. After 17 years of war, okay, where the United States is spending more than the entire UK budget, defense budget, just this year, and still losing in Afghanistan, I think it's time to look at a different way.
So I want to talk about Afghanistan, but just before we get to your Afghan plan, I just want to get to what drives you when you kind of come up with these plans to do private security, especially in a lot of these Muslim-majority countries, because you yourself have referred to the people your men were fighting in Iraq as barbarians who crawled out of the sewer. You say in your memoir, these were the chanting barbarians American troops had been sent to liberate?
Según uno de los mercenarios acusados, dijo que Erick Prince les decía que los iraquíes tenían que ser asesinados por deporte. Y uno de sus mercenarios acusados dijo que Prince se miraba a sí mismo como un caballero cristiano de las cruzadas y que su meta era eliminar a los árabes del mundo y que todo ser viviente de Irak debería ser aniquilado.
Flies the plane.
Safety pilot, sure.
Okay. In 2004 in Afghanistan, a Blackwater pilot flying a plane with US soldiers on board flew the plane into the side of a mountain. He crashed the plane into the mountain, killing 6 passengers on board, including 3 US soldiers. The captain's last words, this Blackwater employee flying the plane, his last words were, "I swear to God, they wouldn't pay me if they knew how much fun this was." You were paying him, Erick Prince. He had only been in the country 2 weeks. Have you or your employees learned any lessons from that horrific incident before you go back into Afghanistan? Let's go to our panel here in the Oxford Union. Sean McFate is a former private military contractor, former officer in the US Army, a professor at Georgetown, author of the book, The New Rules of War. Sean, you've said that US generals have laughed at Erick's plan for Afghanistan. You've called it unworkable and even magical thinking. Why?
Blackwater, if this was a job interview, mercenary, I would not give you the contract because Blackwater was simply a bodyguard shop in Iraq. You've never raised or deployed a military like you're advertising now. I have in places, and it's a lot more sophisticated than just mentors in the field. It does require up to political leadership in Kabul, and they've already messaged that they don't support this. This is a dead deal, in my opinion.
Well, and that you're mistaken, because we built the entire Afghan border police. It was 15,000 people. We did all the recruiting, the training, the vetting, and we actually had mentors that went in the field with them. And the success rate of these units, when our guys were allowed to go with them, effectively as training wheels, their success rate went very, very high, and it worked.
Okay.
So, you know, I guess I'm the only guy that can say I've had 56 of my own aircraft in country doing that kind of work for the U.S. military.
Okay, Gaith Abdul Ahad is an award-winning Guardian journalist from Iraq. You've covered conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, and beyond. Gaith, how do the Iraqi people remember Blackwater and Erick Prince, in your view?
I mean, it's amazing to kind of sit here and listen to Erick kind of speak about Blackwater and the services they did in Iraq, because the word Blackwater is synonymous with the worst of the American occupation of Iraq. There is not a single Iraqi that I know. I mean, I'm one of those barbarians that was liberated by your country. But there is not a single Iraqi who would, you just mentioned the word Blackwater to, who would not say corruption, violence. And I'm not talking only about the Nasur Square kind of massacre, but I'm talking about the whole 10 years of the existence of these mercenaries. And I think part of the failure of the American project in Iraq was due to the using of the contractors.
Isn't that a major problem, that you could concede that even if your plan is a good one, you shouldn't be the one doing it, given the legacy you've left behind with some people?
Here's the thing, your math is a little skewed, because the U.S. didn't invade Iraq till 2003, and I sold the company in 2010, so that's certainly not 10 years. The company tracked,
7 years.
we tracked all the vehicles where everybody was moving, okay? And there was dozens and dozens of times that it was brought up, there was a Blackwater event here, Blackwater event there, and we didn't have people within 200 kilometers of that location. The sad thing is, Blackwater became like Kleenex. It became
Do you know why? Because you became this.
Because we were the largest one doing
because
that
you were
very,
the
very
worst.
high-profile mission.
That's the reason. I mean, you gave in Iraq now, or in Yemen, or any other.
En Estados Unidos, 3 mercenarios de Blackwater han sido encontrados culpables de asesinatos a civiles y otro fue hallado culpable de matar en primer grado, o sea, de matar sabiendo que eran inocentes a los que le disparaba. Y no solo eso, en el 2005 Erick fue acusado de disparar más de 70 veces a civiles. En el 2006 fue acusado de dispararle a una ambulancia y matar a los tripulantes. Y que sus mercenarios actuaban raros. Por esos escándalos fue que se vio forzado a cambiar el nombre 2 veces de su compañía, temiendo que nadie le iba a dar contratos. Pero no solo eso, también ha dicho que Estados Unidos debería colonizar África y Latinoamérica y poner una persona de Estados Unidos para que gobierne esos países, ya que toda esa gente de esos países son incapaces de gobernar y los ha llamado bárbaros, como los reyes llamaban a los indios en los tiempos de la colonización.
These places, they don't use the word contract or something. They use Blackwater. In Yemen, in wherever, in Somalia, they don't use mercenaries or contractors.
If you've been in Afghanistan recently as well, I believe, if you're reporting, do you think Afghans will welcome this plan that Erick is putting on the table?
I've met administration officials, high security officials of the current Afghan administration's opposition, and some of your own friends in Afghanistan, and all agree on one thing: it's not going to work.
You're saying engagement ambushes. Just to be clear for the audience, one study found that Blackwater opened fire first in 84% of the shootings. It wasn't defensive.
Because
you fired first.
Okay, but it's not just a matter of the enemy opening fire with a firearm to attack. They open fire with a trigger switch when they drive up to you and destroy you.
Okay.
I mean, literally.
But there's also ambulance drivers, 9-year-old children,
you should see the
doctors on their way to work.
Whether it's Hamas in Palestine, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, bad guys load ambulances with explosives and kill innocent people.
But not in the cases I cited. We're going to cameras. The implication being that you don't accept you did anything wrong there. Had there been cameras, your men would be vindicated. Is that what you're saying? Do you want to be explicit about that?
Look,
because they've been found guilty in American courts. I know the courts you don't like, but they've been found guilty in American courts.
After the 4th time of trying them.
Okay, they've been found guilty in an American court.
And we had numerous other incidents where there was a shooting and we were accused, and when
okay, but in Nisour Square, do you believe your men did anything wrong?
And when law enforcement authorities viewed the tapes, there was no problem.
Do you believe in Nisour Square your men did anything wrong? It's a very simple question.
In hindsight, sure. If it's an innocent civilian, every innocent civilian that's killed is a tragedy, is a horror, and we tried very hard to avoid that. That's why 41 men died doing that mission, shielding other people from enemy bullets who were trying to kill them and slaughter them or hang them from a bridge and burn them.
Okay, we can take some more questions. Lady there with her hand up. Do you wait for the microphone to come to you?
Yes, I was a U.S. television journalist in Iraq during and after the invasion. I saw Blackwater people humiliate and terrorize Iraqis. They were hostile to journalists and they were hostile to NGOs. Why should you get a contract to do the same thing in Afghanistan?
All right. Before this gets out of hand, we'll go back.
Absolutely,
you guys aren't going to agree. You're not going to agree. Before this gets out of hand, we'll carry on with the audience. We'll go to this gentleman with the tie and the suit.
So Afghanistan been in war since 2001 and fighting 20 international terrorist groups. Since 2014, the Afghan National Security Forces has been doing this by themselves. So how do you justify that you'll get a contract and go and do the war in Afghanistan, given that you're making money out of this business and you'll ever want to conclude this business there? And one point, please do us a favor and have a bold line between mercenaries of death and democracy, and it's totally up to the people of Afghanistan to decide who is their next president. Thank you.
Can I just ask, all the things you and Blackwater have been accused of, some of which we've discussed tonight, but there's so much more. You said in 2007, quote, "I sleep the sleep of the just. I'm not feeling guilty." Just wondering, is that still the case today? You still have no regrets, no guilt, no ruined sleep at all over all those innocent lives taken by Blackwater employees? None?
Look, the fact is the company did what it was asked to. It was asked to protect. We saved thousands and thousands of people. We saved many, many wounded U.S. soldiers well beyond the scope of the contract. Okay, we did what we were asked. Any injury, any civilian that's injured in a car crash or an accidental
shot in the
shooting,
head, or 9-year-old children shot in the head.
Correct. And since long after Blackwater was involved, 110,000 Iraqi civilians have been killed in that same conflict by ISIS, by incompetent government.
So when I have George Bush on the show, I'll ask him about his sleep. I'm asking about the people your guys killed. Does it keep you awake at night?
We were asked to do a job, and we performed very, very well.
We'll have to leave it there. Thanks to our audience here in the Oxford Union. Thanks to our panel of experts who've come tonight. And thanks to Erick Prince for joining me on Head to Head. That's our show. Head to Head will be back next week. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Los mercenarios que contrata el señor Erick para Blackwater son drogadictos, alcohólicos y gente con problemas mentales que usan sustancias para mantenerse despiertos. La excusa de este señor es que todos son sospechosos y que pueden estar armados y hay que matarlos aunque sean niños, mujeres o ancianos. Lo peor es que nunca ha pedido disculpas y ahora ha dicho en entrevistas que Estados Unidos debería colonizar a Latinoamérica para tener el poder total. Este señor es un enfermo mental que lo único que sabe hacer es matar por dinero. Es un asesino que contrata asesinos para ir a matar a cualquiera en cualquier país o en cualquier parte del mundo. Y eso incluye niños, mujeres, ancianos y todo aquel que se le ponga enfrente. Todos los especialistas han dicho que lo que Erick maneja es una compañía de mercenarios asesinos. Les dejo el video y ustedes saquen sus reflexiones antes de aplaudir a un asesino. Por favor, investiguen en las redes, en YouTube, en Google y en otras redes sociales donde están todos los archivos de las personas para que no se equivoquen qué personas están aplaudiendo o qué personas están invitando a sus países. Los dejo con el video. Gracias y nos vemos en el próximo.